Good morning, everybody. I want to talk about the two heroes they just announced at the International. Now, sadly, we're still on the road. We did go to the International after all, and as a result, I don't really have a great recording setup right now. But we'll make do with what we've got. Okay, just so we're on the same page here. Wish I could give you guys something that's a little bit more professional, but oh well. Underlord. Now everybody saw this coming. Pit Lord, not at all a surprise, right? They changed his name for copyright reasons, but it's the same hero. We also know exactly what he does, right? He is in Dota 1, right? We know what Pit Lord is and what he does and all of that. So let's just go through his abilities really quick and I'll give you my opinion about all of that and kind of like explain, what he does and such. Then I want to talk about Monkey King. Now we don't have a lot of information about Monkey King. But I did take a look at the trailer and I tried to figure out as much as I possibly could for you guys. But Underlord first. Now, his Q is called Firestorm. It's a very straightforward ability. You select an area, there's going to be a rain of fire coming down. 1 every second, 6 waves overall. It deals 70 damage each wave and it applies a debuff that deals an additional 40 damage over 2 seconds. Very straightforward. It can deal a lot of damage if you manage to hit all of the waves. Right? It can deal up to 560 damage, which is a ton, but that's very unlikely. It lasts a long time, right? 6 waves, one every second. It's very easy to evade that. As a result, it's really something that is a little bit unreliable on its own. However, if you have some support, right, and if you use his W, which we'll get to in a second, then you can also just get a lot of damage in that way. But if you have some support that can keep enemies in place, like for example a Chronosphere, which we saw a lot of at the International, or an Enigma with a black hole,
a Shadow Shaman,
or Shadow Shaman, then you can really hurt people with this spell, right? I think it's something that's really, it can both be completely useless and deal 70 damage, I guess 110 damage, or up to 560 to an entire team. Now, his W is really something that combos well with the Firestorm. It's called Pit of Malice. The Pit of Malice has a huge cast range, 750 cast range, and you can cast this little area of effect that roots all enemies inside of it. It's kind of a Treant Protector ultimate. It does all of the same things. It interrupts channels, but if enemies channel while they are rooted, it doesn't, get them out of that. Right? So if they start the channel after they got rooted, they can still do that. People who cannot move, certain blinks are disabled, certain other blinks are not. It's just a straightforward rooting ability. Now the interesting thing about it is that it creates this pit. Now this pit lasts 7 seconds. And it doesn't only root enemies that are inside of it when they were originally caught, but it also roots enemies that run into it afterwards. Now the root doesn't last the full 7 seconds, that would be ridiculous. It lasts 2.5 at max level, but it's still really strong as a zoning tool, right? You kind of put it down in an area, you put the Firestorm on top of that, enemies will not want to walk inside of it. Under no circumstances do you want to walk inside of that. And that's really kind of the combo that Underlord has going on. Now, another interesting note about the Pit of Malice is that it does disable for 2.5 seconds, right? So as a result, you can kind of expect a certain amount of damage from the Firestorm if you have both of the abilities maxed. You can usually expect 3 waves to hit at least. I think it would not be unreasonable to say that you can often hit 4 of them. In which case you will deal either 250 or 320 damage with the Firestorm to every enemy inside of that area, which is actually pretty powerful, right? On top of that, again, they are zoning tools, which is really the most important note about this, right? They are zoning tools, very powerful zoning tools at that. You kind of lock opponents out of an area. Imagine a choke point next to Roshan or just in the jungle in general. You can lock down an area so enemies will not want to walk through it. If they attempt to walk through it, they'll get heavily punished and probably die. It's actually pretty powerful in that regard. But again, on the other side, if enemies just kind of play around it and they don't clump up and they don't walk into it, then both of these abilities are not going to be particularly powerful. Now, a thing I like about them though is they're really straightforward. They're really straightforward, really simple spells, right? We haven't had a lot of simple heroes in Dota, especially recently, right? If you look at the most recent heroes we've got Winter Wyvern, Arc Warden, right? These are not heroes that are easy to understand for somebody who's just kind of starting out with Dota, or for somebody who's playing the hero for the first time. While Underlord really is, and that's something I personally appreciate, right? Now, of course, he has 2 more abilities. We've got his E, the Atrophy Aura. Now, Atrophy Aura reduces damage of enemies around the Underlord by 45% at max level. Now, this damage is base damage, right? We've talked about this before, but there's a difference between base damage and just damage. Damage is all of your damage. You know, if you look at the damage in the game, right, you have usually, let's say, 100 plus 250 or whatever the hell. Hold on, that's a little bit unrealistic, but you get the point, right? Now, the 100 is your base damage, the plus 250 is add damage. Add damage is not calculated into the Atrophy Aura. So in the case of our 100 damage plus 250, the Atrophy Aura, or let's actually say 100 damage plus 200, right? The Atrophy Aura wouldn't reduce that unit's damage by 135, which would be 45%, but instead it reduces it by 45 because it's only 45% of the base damage. That's the important thing to note there. Now, another thing about Atrophy Aura is if a unit dies while under the effect of Atrophy Aura, Underlord will get a damage boost. Now, this damage boost is actually really significant and something I feel like a lot of people aren't really talking about, just how strong this can be. At max level, Underlord gets 45 damage for each hero that dies under Atrophy Aura for 70 seconds. 70 seconds. 45 damage for 70 seconds. That is a lot of damage for a very long duration. And it's really, really powerful like that. Oh, actually, sorry, made a mistake. It decreases the base damage of enemies by 42%, not 45. Sorry, minor. But anyway, 70 seconds is a very long duration. In 70 seconds, you can kill a team twice in the early game, or maybe even 3 times if you really have constant fighting going on. This is really something that can make him be a complete powerhouse, right? Underlord is a strength hero. Underlord is a hero that is naturally tanky, and as a result, he will stay in the fights for a long time. Now imagine you build like an armlet on the guy. The rest of his spells don't really require any items in particular, right? But imagine you build like an armlet and face boots. You can really run in and just pound into people as soon as somebody dies with 45 bonus damage. Truly matters. That is a lot.
I have a question.
You have a question?
My hand is raised. See.
Okay, what is your question?
Does it affect creeps as well?
Yes,
45?
it does affect creeps. Now, the 45 is not for creeps. If a creep dies while under Atrophy Aura, they get Underlord gets 5 bonus damage.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't quite get as much, but you gotta keep in mind, again, it still lasts 70 seconds. If, for example, you're pushing, right? Pushing 30 minutes into the game, creep wave is gonna be 5 to 6 creeps. You nuke down a creep wave, you get 25 damage. You nuke down a second creep wave while you're pushing, right? You have
50 damage.
50 bonus damage.
I have another question. My hand is raised.
Yes.
Is there a cap?
No.
So it's like just unlimited.
Yes, you can just have as much damage as you want.
That sounds awesome.
It is actually, it sounds pretty powerful. Now, the problem with the Atrophy Aura, and the reason why I personally think it's probably not going to be too overpowered, is that the other 2 abilities are more necessary as an Underlord, and you'll probably want to max those out first. If I had to guess, like a typical Underlord skill build would probably put 4 points into the Q, 1 point into the other 2 abilities, and 1 point into the ultimate at level 7. Right? You may want to skip the ultimate, possibly, but we're gonna talk about that now. His ultimate is Dark Rift. Now, what Dark Rift does is it's basically AoE TP boots. You select a friendly unit anywhere on the map, and then you and all allied heroes around you will get teleported to that unit after a short delay. Now, this is not a channel. None of Underlord's abilities are a channel. And it has a 5/4/3 second delay, depending on which level, right? Now, this ability is gonna allow for maximum ratting, basically. This is why personally I'm not looking forward to having Underlord in the game. Imagine the following scenario. You're playing against a team that has a Nature's Prophet and an Underlord. You're pushing. All of a sudden, you have 5 enemy heroes knocking down your bottom barracks. Because they can't do that. Nature's Prophet teleports bottom, next to the tower. Underlord takes the rest of the cast. They all teleport top, start pushing down your barracks. And when you try to react, or when you try to counter push, when you try to get their barracks as a return, they just all TP back. That is the kind of thing that Underlord enables with this ultimate. Now it does have a pretty lengthy cooldown of over 2 minutes, but nonetheless it's a very scary ability. Right? It's really something that can have a game deciding impact. If we think about some of the games we saw at the International, EG versus DC, Mu ratted down EG, right? EG lost that last game only because the Beastmaster kept backdooring, right? Backdooring is such a powerful strategy. Now imagine it's not just one Beastmaster, but it's a Beastmaster sending in a Hawk, and all of a sudden the entire team is sitting there, except for the Keeper of the Light, who is still keeping away your push. That is the kind of thing that Underlord can enable, and it's just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So on one hand, I'm looking forward to having him in the game, because his Q and his W, I think, are really nice, straightforward abilities. His E sounds like a lot of fun to use, sounds really satisfying to use, but I do not look forward to playing against the ratting teams that are just abusing his very powerful ultimate. I expect him to be played as an offlane. I don't really feel him as a mid or a safe lane carry. I don't really think he'll make it for a great support. He needs too many levels for that. But with the Pit of Malice, you can kind of keep enemies away. I imagine he's gonna have enough survivability, right, to actually stay in the fights. We'll probably have some balance patches before he gets released, so it's not really super certain how tanky he's gonna be. But currently, again, he's looking pretty beefy. So I think we'll likely see him as an offlaner if he is competitively viable, which is an incredibly hard call to make right now. One additional last thing I want to note about Undelored, his Q is very powerful for farming, right? 560 AoE damage. The fact that the enemies need to be static for that doesn't really matter with creeps, right? Now, it's not going to be very powerful for farming, just going into the jungle and clearing out each individual camp, because the hero doesn't have enough mana for that. But imagine you have a big creep camp stacked by your supports. You're playing offlane, right? But your supports stack up a creep camp, you run in at level 7, nuke it down really quick, boom, you're going to have your money. Right? Again, I feel like this is completely along the lines of having him as an offlaner. I feel like Underlord is just meant to be an offlaner. Monkey King. Now, one important thing to note about Monkey King is that Monkey King is something that we have seen many times before. Monkey King is a hero that is in every single big, Dota clone. League has one, Smite has one, Hon has one, and actually we know of an older version of the Monkey King as well. Now we'll talk about that in a second. First, I actually want to go a little bit into the mythology of Monkey King, just because it's pretty funny, kind of interesting, so we have some notes here. In Asian mythology, Sun Wukong was a very annoying but also very powerful monkey who caused chaos across China. So the Jade Emperor decided that he needed to deal with the monkey and invited him into the heavenly army. This made him quite happy. Sun Wukong was actually really excited over this opportunity until he discovered that he ended up as the royal stable cleaner. He decides that shoveling cloud horse poop isn't quite for him and proceeds to kick the crap out of the heavenly army, which includes 100,000 soldiers and 3 very powerful ghostly spirit generals. And then he decides to challenge Buddha, and he runs to the edge of heaven, and then there he finds these 5 pillars, and then he pees on the pillars, still looking for the Supreme Buddha to fight. And then he realizes that the 5 pillars were actually Buddha's hands, and then he just peed on Buddha's hands. And then he tries to fight Buddha, but Buddha is like, no, and puts him into a mountain for 500 years. And then he gets freed from the mountain 500 years later, and he accompanies the monk Xuang Song?
I think it's...
Sung Song?
How do you read it?
I don't know.
I think that's Zhuanzhang? Zhuanzhang?
Some-
Zhuanzhang.
He accompanies a monk on his journey to the West, which is really like the big book that everybody knows, right? The Journey to the West.
I deeply apologize to any Chinese speakers who I may have just offended with my terrible pronunciation.
Yes, great. The thing is, Sun Wukong is an asshole, and he's a monkey, and he's basically a god, right? He has all of these crazy abilities. He can transform into all kinds of weird shit. He can make illusions of himself. He floats on a cloud. He has a staff that weighs 8,000 tons that can extend into never-ending, lengths and stuff like that. The most commonly known piece of, pop culture that is based on the journey to the West and Sun Wukong is actually Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball. Not even Dragon Ball Z, although Dragon Ball Z too, but mostly the original Dragon Ball is very much based on Journey to the West and Sun Wukong's character. Now, Sun Wukong has a few themes to him that are very commonly seen across games. Now, again, I mentioned that basically every other Dota-like game has a Monkey King. And if you look at these Monkey Kings, Hong's Monkey King is based off movement and combos, right? League of Legends Monkey King is based on invisibility and illusions. Smite is based on his staff and transformations. And then we have information about an old version of the Dota Monkey King, which is also based on illusions and movement. Now, the general theme all of them share though is that they all have the staff, which is a big thing in kind of like how you play Sun Wukong, right? So now we know about Sun Wukong, and we know that he likes illusions, he likes his staff, and he's generally kind of like a tricky bastard, right? Like every game, if you look at what these things are, right? Movement, invisibility, illusions, transformations, illusions, movement. Clouds, whatever, right? But all of these things are kind of like tricky, fast character playstyles. Right now, originally we already knew Monkey King was a hero, right? We knew this hero was in development, but then we kind of thought what happened to him when we stopped hearing about his development is that he kind of turned into the new Phantom Lancer, right? Phantom Lancer was reworked at some point, and people thought that the Monkey King who was in development was kind of scrapped, and then his abilities were put on Phantom Lancer. Now, as it turns out, of course, this is not true. Now let's go and actually take a look at the trailer. At 11 seconds, you can see that the Monkey King goes for this swipe with his staff, which kind of pushes enemies away, and then he does this flip and extends his staff and smacks people down with it, right? Which seems to deal damage and stun or push people away or something like that, right? Which the thing there is though that he has this staff extension. Now I want to point you towards this little image right here. Now this image is the old Monkey King. This is what we know about the Monkey King when he was in development in Dota 1. Now, if you look at his abilities, you can see that Sun Wukong has a Q which unleashes his spirit and sweeps the ground, dealing damage and striking all foes with a single attack from an illusion. Now, it didn't seem like an illusion in the trailer, but this is still pretty similar, right? Now, the flicker and the nimble nimbus in this, in this old Monkey King doesn't really seem to apply anymore, but the Cloud Dance does, the ultimate. Now we'll get to that in a second. Before that, I want to point you towards something else though. At the very start of the trailer, Monkey King is kind of flipping around in the trees, which, he's a monkey, right? No big deal. But at 16 seconds, you can see that he goes back into the trees and he kind of uses tree-to-tree movement. As well as at 19 seconds, he is disguised as a tree, right? The Beastmaster is kind of standing there looking around, and then the Monkey King, who was previously a tree now appears, right? He kind of like had transformed into a tree. This kind of leads me to believe that we'll actually see another tree-based hero, right? The only hero we currently have that really utilizes trees is Timbersaw, but I feel like Monkey King may actually be another one. But
And Treant.
Treant, I guess, yeah, Treant, right? But Monkey King may actually be another one, where he can use trees as a form of movement, right? Like jump from tree to tree or something like that. The trailer seems to hint towards that. The trailer also shows us that he can transform into a tree, right? Which, by the way, I do not believe that this stuff was just put in there to look cool. Absolutely not. I think they are showing off what he can do, right? This is my assumption here. Now, I may be completely wrong about all of this, and they may have just put shit in there for it to look cool.
But that's not how Valve does.
No, that's not how anybody does it. I don't think so. I don't think they would just randomly create a trailer with random spells, right? There has to be a meaning to this. So he can jump from tree to tree, and he can disguise himself as a tree. Now, this kind of looks to me like it would be the same ability, right? I can kind of see that, where you can kind of click on the ground and then you become a tree, or you click on a tree and then you can jump from tree to tree. Now, how would this scale? This is really the thing that I wonder about, right? Like, how would this ability scale? But I imagine maybe like how often you can do the jump from tree to tree, or maybe the range on how far you can jump or something like that, right? But either way, I think that's a really cool idea. I really like that idea. I think that is actually fantastic, right? There's a lot of weird interactions, of course, like how would Shackle Shot work? I have no idea, right? I just don't know. But I think the idea of having him jump from tree to tree is really, really cool. Now, after he comes out of the tree, right, he has this knockback, which pushes the Beastmaster onto the ground, which personally I don't really think, well, I'm not sure if that means anything, right? Like, that could really, if that's an ability or not, it's a little bit tricky, right? That's kind of a hard call.
He could reveal himself and deal damage, knocking back in an AoE or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't really know, right?
Yeah.
Like, that could really imply anything, right? That could also just be like a generic hitting a guy, setting up the next scene. And I don't know about that. I don't know if that's gonna be an ability, but I guess it could be. And then we get to the ultimate. Now, the ultimate, I want to again point you back to the picture I just showed you of the old Monkey King in Dota 1, which had the ability called Cloud Dance. Target hero becomes immobilized as Sun Wukong performs a sky-high somersault off a cloud, then crashes back down, surrounding his target with 3 illusions on all sides. Now, if you look at this, the Monkey King, what he does is he rips out some hair and then creates illusions with this, which, by the way, is yet again part of his lore. He can use his hair to create illusions, and he can use his hair to create weapons and stuff like that. That is part of Sun Wukong literature. Now, the thing is, though, that he does that, and then the illusions appear, and 3 of them, specifically 3 of them, actually attack the Beastmaster. Now, there's also a bunch more. There's this whole army that just charges down the lane, which kind of makes me believe that maybe it's kind of like an AoE targeted ability, where a bunch of illusions appear, right, and they all attack everything in the area, maybe similar to Beaver's Q, the Swarm, right? That could be something there. Or it is actually that Cloud Dance. I don't think that's unlikely that they just, added in some more illusions for dramatic effect or something like that. Because, Monkey King's also not going to sit on the Beastmaster and bash him in the head with his staff, right? That's also not going to happen. But yeah, I actually think it's pretty similar to the Cloud Dance, right? The implication, I think, is totally there that it could just be that ability to some extent. Either way, what we know about our Monkey King in Dota is he seems to be illusions based on his ultimate, right? Then movement coming in through the tree movement, which makes sense, right? And again, then he has the staff extension thing, which seems to be pretty straightforward as an ability, right? Maybe it's a 2-hit combo thing, maybe it's a 1 just straight line, deals damage in a line, something that's similar to Earthshaker's stun, right? But it could be either one of those. But we have the staff, we have the movement, we have the illusions. And we also kind of have the invisibility, I guess, or the transformation with the trees. All of these things make sense to me. All of this makes sense to me. So yeah, that's kind of my current thought on the thing. I am very excited for this hero. I'm actually super excited. It's been kind of like a question, I suppose. A lot of people have asked me, like, what happens after Underlord is ported, right? Like, does Dota just end? No, of course not. They're gonna keep developing it. They're gonna keep adding in new heroes. And this is gonna be our first Dota 2 unique hero. I'm really excited for that. I'm really looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think. You know, maybe you guys discovered something I did not, which I don't think is very unlikely. Right? I think there's a very, very high chance you guys figured something out I didn't. But either way, I would be glad to hear about it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating on the video. And before we leave, really quick, Predator Acer laptop experience. Yes, Acer sent me this laptop, which allowed me to make this video and all of the other videos I've made in America. So I just wanted to give a quick thanks to them for that. Predator G15. Looks a little bit ridiculous, does make silly sounds, but it's actually has teeth, but it's actually a fantastic laptop. It's actually, I have no complaints other than the weight and the ridiculousness. The I am a gamer thing. But other than that, this is actually a beautiful, fantastic laptop.
And for him to not have any complaints about something means that it's pretty fantastic.
Yes, I have complaints about literally everything. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.